Hey guys, Matt Size here, and today I'm feeling a bit malicious, yet still willing to follow the rules with r/malicious compliance. Why can't I talk? Anyways, today I only have 3 stories lined up because I've got an extra large boy to finish off with. But first we're going to start with this one. It is NSFW, but I don't really care because, like, it's nudity. That's all it is. It's not the worst thing that could be out there. Just saw a similar story that reminded me of how I quit one of my first jobs. So back when I was a teenager, around 14 years old, I worked for the shop down the road as their weekend baker, which was mainly just defrosting pre-cooked items or browning pre-cooked bread in the ovens. My boss's daughter also worked there as a checkout staff. However, she would just call in sick / hungover every weekend, so of course her dad would let her off the hook and make me cover her shift. So I would work 5 AM to 7 PM most weekends. After a couple years, I decided I was quitting and gave them my 2 weeks notice. My boss asked me to stay an extra week to train the new weekend baker, which I agreed to. At the end of the 3rd week, I went to my boss's office and did the usual, "Well, it's been great working with you," to which he replies, "So OP, the extra week you work to train the new baker means you have been here 2 years, which means according to policy, you need to work 4 weeks notice instead. So I'll see you next week." What kind of rule is that? Also, you need to give us back your uniform on your last shift, and it needs to be fresh and cleaned. Being a petulant teenager who was tired of waking up at 4 AM, I stared at him in disbelief for a couple of seconds, waiting for the short-eating grin on his face to laugh and say, "Just kidding, have a good one." That moment didn't come. So I walked out of the office, stripped down to my boxers, folded up my baker's whites trousers, and even the little mesh fedora on top, walked into his office again and dropped the uniform on his desk and walked home. He followed me downstairs and through the shop shouting about how I could never work anywhere again. Thinking back, that must have been a strange thing for customers to see. It was a 10-minute walk home in the summer sun, nothing arduous. Apparently, according to his daughter, who got back in touch with me a couple of years later, I'm now one of the stories my old boss tells people when he's had a few drinks. Not in a nice, funny story way. Here's our context. I live in England, and yet it's illegal to make kids work 14-hour days. But then it's also probably why retail shops love employing teenagers, because they're just grateful for the money and don't really know their rights. Really? England? Well, I would say I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. You played that well. You played it well. You just walk out in your undies. To be honest, at least it wasn't full birthday suit style. That would have got you arrested. So, this is a really NSFW. Guy walking around in his undies, that's apparently, it gets an NSFW because, well, it's not at the beach. Whereas, there are nudist beaches, and that's NSFW. Not this. Yes, I'll get you a coffee, but your laptop order goes back to the bottom of the pile. In the early 90s, I worked for an international airline company in the IT department as laptop support. I was the first woman in IT for their company, and most companies in my country back then. The company was located at an international airport, and the company was housed in many buildings and airplane hangars spread across and around the airport. The buildings I serviced were mainly the hangars meant for airplane maintenance, where every 6 weeks we would order all the IT equipment that was requested like specialized printers, computers, terminals, etc., 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 etc. It happened again. My job was to take the equipment, set it up, and have the person responsible for said equipment to sign off on it. If it wasn't signed off for whatever reason, the equipment came back with me, would be returned to the vendor, and had to be reordered by the department. Being a woman in her early 20s, in a male-oriented profession and dealing mostly with airplane maintenance men, I had to deal with a lot of short and misogyny. From snickering men having set up their computers I was supposed to service, with hardcore prawn screensavers, to men refusing to let me touch their computers and demanding I get a male colleague to do it. Whoo! Let's book in a 9080 right now! Most of the time I just pretended not to have seen or heard what was going on. Finish setting up their hardware, have it signed off, and leave. Until that one day, I just had enough of their bullshit. That day I had a trolley with me stacked with a bunch of printers and one laptop. Back then, only management got a laptop, and if one was delivered, it was kind of a big deal. Remember, I'm talking about the Windows 3.11 era. I walked into the airplane hangar with my stack cart, setting up printers throughout, while a team of airplane maintenance dudes were servicing a cargo plane. The minute I walked in, there was catcalling, whistling, "Hey baby, where you going with all the heavy equipment?" As usual, I ignored them and just plowed on so I could get out of there. When I was done with the printers, I had to go find this manager who had ordered the laptop and set it up for him. Airplane hangars are weird places. It seemed to be one giant space with some glass offices just off the side. But it does have all these nooks and crannies that seem to be nothing, but are actually small offices or storage spaces. It's hard to find the right place to be sometimes. So I walk up to a bunch of maintenance guys that are just about to take a break and ask them where I can find Mr. Manager Dude, when one of them goes, "Hey baby, you done with all the heavy stuff? I'd like a black coffee with sugar, and my colleague here wants an espresso." To about 5 or 6 guys, this was hilarious, and they started showing off how they wanted their coffees. One of them actually brought out a tray and handed it to me, telling me to be quick about it. Okay. I about had enough, and a thundercloud must have been forming around my head because Mr. Manager Guy, I assumed because he was wearing a suit, who just walked around the corner, snickers and goes, "Oh, what's up, sweetie? Got your period?" No. Of course. This was hardly laughed at by all the other guys. Again, 1980, let go! Out of it! Oh my god! What the fudge is wrong with these people? I asked Mr. Manager Guy if he wanted coffee too, and which kind. I can't remember what kind it was, but I took my cart with the laptop on it, drive it to the coffee machine, made all the coffees, drive it back over, and handed everyone their coffee order. When I handed Mr. Manager Guy his coffee, he said, "Okay, honey, let's go. I'll show you my office so you can set up my new laptop." I looked him in the eye, smiled, and told him, "I can't, as I'm late for my next appointment with all the coffee orders. I really have to run. Unfortunately, your laptop will be returned, and you have to reorder one. So I'll see you in 6 weeks. Bye!" She's gone! Of course, he tried to tell me he really needed that laptop now, and the coffee thing was all in good fun, and I shouldn't be so sensitive. Blah, blah, yeah. When I just kept on walking with my cart, it turned ugly pretty soon. I was a beep. and he was going to have me fired. Did I have any idea who he was? Etc, etc, etc. Come on, stop using etc. I just silently chuckled. I just silently chucked everything in the car and drive off with him screaming after me. He did try to get me fired, but my manager had my back and made sure his reorder was delayed a few times to teach him a lesson. When I finally delivered his laptop 4 months later, he was very respectful though. Unfortunately, it wasn't the last time I had to deal with this kind of short. That was a fun one. 1980, let's go! Oh, that was just fun. Anyways, I'm just like, 1980 was a wild time. At least I'm assuming 1980. It might have been 1970 even. I don't know. Might have been 1950. Like, seriously. Like, the further back in time you go, the more likely it is. Although you can't go too far back because then you'll be out of the period of time of computers. No calls, and I can't leave the floor? Okay. Just gonna sit on the floor and read this story. This story harkens back to ye olden days when Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were the things to do on a family-friendly Friday, and cell phones were still something most people didn't really consider necessary, aka the daddies. I took a job at a video store near my house. It was a small family-owned store with 3 different branches in town. The job was wonderful. I loved movies and games. It was close to my residence and school. I even got free rentals at a discount from the sub shop next door. Ooh, gonna love those subs. Was it Subway? The video store was located in a beautiful old building from the 1920s. Oh yeah. It had marble stairs and a really amazing cage elevator that led up to the storage and employee lounge. The job was perfect for me. The hours were flexible, the pay was decent, and the one drawback to this was my superior. Let's call her Amanda, because that was her name. Seriously, screw Amanda. All I can think of is Amanda Young from the Saw movies. So I'm not going to use her I'm going to refer to her as Young, just for the reference to Saw. Young was on the older side and seemed to not be content with how her life had turned out. As a result, she took all of her frustrations on anyone she could, especially those people who she worked with, who happened to be younger. If you are a college student like myself, you earned a special extra helping of disdain from her. I mean, really, how dare you decide to actually have aspirations of making more than $7.50 an hour? While I'm genuinely fairly tolerant of people like Young, she really went the extra mile to annoy me as much as humanly possible. She was bitter, mean, petty, and did anything and everything she could to just be plain unpleasant. She wasn't even nice to customers. The only upside to this attitude was that she didn't let Karen customers get away with their Karenness. You pull Young out when you got the Karen. It's like, oh, we got a Karen out there. Young's just like, I got this. I might have been able to take more if she happened to be particularly knowledgeable or good at her job. She was neither, and only appeared to have the job because of good old nepotism. She was the daughter-in-law of the owner. She knew nothing about movies or games or gaming systems or anything we rented or sold. When a customer had a question, she would pawn them off on another employee. When she had a problem with the computers, who did she call to fix it? Me. When there was a delivery that needed to be checked into the system, who did she call? Me. When stock needed to be dragged up to the stockroom, that'd be me again. Any unpleasant task that came up, she would always try to give it to me. Generally, she hid in the back, watching TV or talking on the phone, which did tie up the store's landline for literally hours. Or doing anything and everything she could to avoid doing her actual job. When I brought up Young to Ken, the owner, he simply sighed and gave a pained look and asked me to just bear with it and stay out of her way if I could. I got the distinct impression that Ken didn't care much for her either, but she was his daughter-in-law. He did his best to try to make sure I wasn't scheduled to work with her, but at least once a week I had to work with this paragon of kindness and light. One day I was on the phone with a customer discussing the late fees on their account when Amanda wanted to make a call. This resulted in Young ripping me a new one in front of an entire store of people. It was a Saturday and we were packed to the rafters. She was yelling so loudly that the woman on the phone asked me if we were being robbed and whether she should call the police. Before I could answer, Young yanked the phone out of my hand and slammed it into the cradle. You are never, ever to be on that phone. You understand me? While I was desperately aching to headbutt her, I bit my tongue, took a deep breath, counted to 10. When that didn't work, I counted to 20. Then 50. Instead of telling her I hoped that she'd be ravaged by rabid wolverines, I simply smiled and said, alright. This seemed to annoy her even more than if I had gotten angry. She stormed back to the office, and I took a stream of customers, all of whom asked me if I was okay, and one offered suggestions on how to dispose of a body. Whoo! Casual mention of murder. I appreciated the suggestions, but I had plenty of my own ideas, and while evisceration with a pair of rusty safety scissors might be a fulfilling immediate solution, it probably wasn't good for my lifetime goals, unless those goals involved the jail cell and becoming overly acquainted with a thick woman with one eyebrow named Big Betty. Whoa, Black Betty, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what's going on here. Instead, I checked it off in my big book of voodoo curses and hoped I would have a chance to pay Young back for her thoughtful gesture of embarrassing me in front of half the metropolitan area. Still, there were a few more pieces to be laid out for my malicious compliance, and Young wouldn't disappoint me. The next piece came, perhaps a month later. I had been at work for about 7 hours of my 9-hour shift, and had only seen Young once, and that had been when she left the store. Considering I only had 2 hours left of my shift, and hadn't yet taken a break, I really needed to go to the bathroom. I told my co-worker I was heading to the restroom. This was, however, apparently not keeping with Young's view for the universe. She actually began to bang and kick the bathroom door, demanding I come out. Hi, Young, oh yay! I took my time, washed my hands, adjusted my hair, and calmly walked out of the bathroom. While she began to scream, I ignored her and walked up to the front of the store and took the cart of movies to be reshelved. She grabbed the front of the cart and swiped the movies off the top. She then informed me of my questionable parentage, told me that I'd like to passionately hug mothers, and that I was a female dog. Oh. I get what you're saying. Good censoring. Really, I had no idea about any of these things about myself. I thought all the time that I was just your regular, everyday college student. I thought I could have probably gone on television if I hadn't known how unique I was sooner. Young told me that under no uncertain terms was I ever to leave the floor while I was on the clock. Again, I summoned an inner calm that would have made Gundy proud. I forced a smile, nodded, and said alright. While I seemed calm on the outside, I had made up my mind that I would have my chance. No matter how small, I would have my moment. That shining moment came on a lazy and blissfully quiet morning. As it was a morning, it would just be me and Young. Hopefully she would stay in the office and I wouldn't have to deal with her at all. When I came in, there were workmen in the back working on the elevator. One of the guys came up and told me that he needed a part and he would be back tomorrow to finish up the work. Annoying as I would now have to schlep armfuls of heavy tapes up the stairs, but it wasn't the end of the world. The light of my life arrived a few hours later without a word to anyone. I stood at the front, putting "Be Kind, Wine" stickers on a batch of new arrivals when I noticed Young through the back door getting into the elevator. After the man told me that he needed a part, it didn't even occur to me that the elevator had the power on, and I had a moment of amusement at thinking that Amanda going to have to take the hated stairs. She was, above all, lazy. However, it seemed the elevator did indeed have power and worked. At least it worked just enough to go up half a floor and then stop. Yes! It was just close enough to the upper floor that climbing out onto that floor was impossible, and just far enough from the lower floor that climbing out was impossible. I couldn't believe my eyes. Malicious compliance activated. I couldn't entirely see Amanda as she tried to open the door and get out, but I could hear her. The sounds of frustration increased until I heard the most beautiful sound I ever heard. OP! A slow smile, reminiscent of the Grinch, curved my lips. I walked to the very edge of the sales floor and called out, "Yes?" "The elevator's stuck. Can you get the door? Can you open the door from your side?" "I don't know. I can't see it from here." "Well, get over here and try to open it." "I can't do that, Young." "Why the fork not?" "I'm not allowed to leave the floor while I'm on the clock under any circumstances." "Are you kidding me?" "You said it yourself. Since I value my job, I can't possibly go against orders." A stream of curses came from the locked and stuck elevator. I'm pretty sure I'm still not old enough for all the things that I heard that day. Call maintenance. Another should be in the office. Trying to sound as innocent and sympathetic as I could, I could possibly manage while also trying not to burst out laughing. "I can't do that either. I had to leave the floor to go to your office." "You think you're real funny, don't you?" I don't know. I don't know what you mean." "Call Ken then. I know you know his number." "Well, I would, but I'm not allowed to use the phone, remember?" Amazingly, there were no curses. There were no screams. There was not even one word telling me that my parents were never married. It was silent. I think, for the first time, she realized that she might actually be in a little trouble. She was stuck in a position entirely of her own making, with no way out of it for the foreseeable future. "OP, please, just get me out of here." "I'm sorry, Young. I'm just following orders." All pretense of niceness was dropped as she proceeded to inform me of all my imagined faults and those of my parents, friends, and any other relations I might have or think to have in the future. Then she sealed her fate. She yelled at me. I was fired. In truth, I really only planned on letting her stew for a few minutes, but after that, nah. I'm fired? Okay. Then I guess I'll head home. Oh, I should let you know that Bill called and said he'd be in at 7 instead of 5. He had to pick up his brother from the airport. So I guess you'll be in there for a while yet. I hope you have a book or something. Bye-bye. What? You bleep? How the bleep do you bleep? How do you think you can bleep being do this to me? When I get out of here, I'm going to come bleep you in your bleep, you bleep, bleeping, bleep. Wow. Okay, yeah. Have fun with that. Have a good one. I'll leave my name tag and shirt on the front desk. Wait! Bye! Wait! Don't worry. I'll look up on my way out and I'll put up a sign so people will know we're closed. OP, wait! I didn't mean it. Come back. I walk up front, right out of the sign that we're closed until 7 PM due to unforeseen circumstances. The very last thing I heard from Young before I opened the door was, "But I have to pee!" Lady, you're gonna have to just pee right on the spot. Still snickering to myself, I locked the door and drove the 45 minutes out to Ken's house to let him know that the shop was closed. Could I have gone the 5 minutes to my house and called? Sure I could. And did I? Nope. Ken seemed a bit surprised to see me there. I thought you were working today. Oh, I was, but Young fired me. She's not allowed to do that. All hiring and firing goes through me. She knows that. Don't worry, I'll call her. I think maybe it's time to talk to my son about her. I can't keep her on with her acting like this. I don't think she'll be able to answer the phone. Ken gave me a long, sharp look as I tried not to smile. Then I gave up entirely and just smiled broadly back to him. OP? Yes. What did you do? Me? I didn't do a thing. I only followed her orders. Ken leaned down to meet me eye to eye. What happened? I gave her the full tale of her telling me that I couldn't use the phone under any circumstances, to her telling me that I wasn't allowed to leave the sales floor when I was on the clock. Then I told him about her being stuck in the elevator. You didn't tell her the elevator was broken? I didn't even realize it had power. Ken just stood there looking at me gobsmacked, then started laughing. I should really go get her out. He paused for a minute and looked down at his dirty hands and shoes, then up at me. But I really shouldn't leave those flowers half planted, and then I should probably take a shower. I don't want to make that drive covered in dirt. Oh, of course not. You've got a really nice car, and it'd be a lot of work to get that much dirt out of your seats and carpet. Do you need some help with the planting? Yes. Ken nodded suddenly back at me and gave another chuckle. It probably took another hour to finish planting the flowers. Ken told me I'd be paid for the day and sent me home with assurances that I did indeed still have a job and that he would deal with Young. I fully enjoyed the rest of my half day off. I did hear from Bill that when he got there, the elevator repair guy had just arrived and that Young ended up spending about 5 hours stuck in the elevator. After that day, I only saw her one more time. She glared daggers at me as I waved happily to her as she carried a bag of her things out to her car. Whenever I think about it, I still get a little smile on my face. Besides, I only did what she told me to. Question is, did she pee herself? Oh my gosh. Did she pee herself in the elevator? Did the elevator smell a bit funky? With that, I'm going to end this episode here. A bit of a longer episode just because of that one story, but I feel like it was worth it. Links will be in the description to the main channel and also a second channel for you guys to go check out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. A ding, a ding. I'm the Mad Scientist. Mad Scientist out.